goes back a long way. This was taken in July 1971, Pag-asa Island. I was part of a secret mission that transported troops, weapons, equipment, and supplies to the islands we occupied in Freedom Land, now called Kalayaan Island Group. Mr. Hayton mentioned this, the landing in July 1971. I was there on the day of creation, Mr. Hayton. This is another picture. We made a MacArthur-type landing there. In 1994, the PRC built the initial structures on stilts while the Philippine Navy was not patrolling the area due to a monsoon season. And this was how it looked, the original structure, with the assurance that the structures were just temporary shelters for Chinese fishermen. The controversy quieted down. But in 1999, I flew over the area, as a congressman already, on board the Philippine Air Force C-130, which flew at less than 500 feet, and I personally saw many obviously Chinese workers busy with civil works. U.S. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher was with me in that flight. I announced this in the Philippine House of Representatives, where I was serving as a 3-term congressman, the chairman then of the Committee on Public Order and Security, and vice chairman of the Committee on National Defense. In spite of my revelations in Congress and the resulting uproar in media, the Chinese did not stop their construction activities. In 1999, China completed the structures in Mischief Reef, which was transformed into a military installation. And you can see this now, from a temporary shelter to a permanent installation built way within our Philippine exclusive economic zone. If we talk about the South China Sea, we cannot talk about the South China Sea in isolation. We have to relate it to the geopolitical area extending all the way to the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean and all the way to the Arabian Sea. Because the South China Sea links the Indian Ocean to the vast Pacific Ocean. It is a choke point. The power that controls the South China Sea can control the economy of major economic powers like China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines, which is now considered an emerging economic power. India must pass through the South China Sea to interact with China, Vietnam, the Philippines, Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. And this may come as a shock to many, but students of sea power strategist Alfred Ter Mahan, and they know this, China, in spite of its bigness, suffers from a very vulnerable geography. For years in talk shows and speeches, I've been saying this. China is surrounded in all directions and has a short coastline compared to its landmass and population. China's naval assets have very restricted maneuvering space, unlike those of India, Japan, Indonesia, even the Philippines, and of course, the United States. China's sea lines of communications, or SLOCs, are very vulnerable. India's navy can blockade China Strait, passing to the Indian Ocean. A small but deadly naval force based in Singapore can paralyze China's sea-bound trade west of the South China Sea. Vietnamese submarines can wreak havoc on China's merchant marine and even the PLA Navy. A small squadron of Australian submarines positioned in the southern periphery of the South China Sea can stop China's seaborne trade there. To the east, China can be blocked by Japan, which has a potent navy and air force considered among the most modern and powerful in the world. And even the Philippines, with a modest investment in military upgrading, can interdict the Palawan Passage with a swarm of small guided missile boats and an array of medium-range land-based mobile missiles hidden in the passages of Palawan, Mindoro, and Luzon. These are the strategic choke point dilemma of China. For example, if they would like to go eastward, there is Japan that can be waiting for them with the combined naval power of the U.S. Navy and other allies. China couldn't hope to establish a significant level of sea control in this area. There is the Malacca dilemma. And in the Malacca, in 2004, there was an estimate made that over 80% of Chinese crude oil imports transited the Strait of Malacca, with less than 2% transiting the Straits of Lombok. So that is another very major choke point as far as China is concerned. And the PLA Navy is getting bigger, but then the question is, can it break out with their small coastline? Let's look at the Chinese Navy. It has now a new aircraft carrier, although it's not exactly new. It's about 30, 40 years old, the Liaoning. China's submarine fleet includes the following: 5 Jin-class nuclear-powered ballistic submarines, 5 Shang-class nuclear-powered submarines, and 12 Kilo-class submarines from Russia. They have modern destroyers, 24 destroyers, Type 052 Luoyang class, and Type Luhai class. China's Air Force includes the following: 75 Sukhoi 27, 205 locally built Shenyang J-11, and 240 Chengdu J-10 multi-role fighters. But in view of her very assertive and aggressive stance in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and other parts of Asia, China has triggered a coalition against itself. And the potential members of that emerging coalition are big boys. Here's a recent ranking of the world's top military powers. It will be noted that many of them are from Asia and part of an emerging coalition. Here's the listing of the World's Armed Forces Forum from number 1 to 25. And you will note that in our area of the world, the presence in Asia, the US is number 1, China is number 2, Russia is number 4, present in the Vladivostok area, Japan is number 6, India is number 9, South Korea is number 11, Canada is number 16, Taiwan number 17, Australia number 19, and Singapore number 24. And you can imagine the kind of coalitions that would be either in favor of the US or in favor of China just by looking at this array here. The most significant development is the US strategic pivot to Asia Pacific. And here's a diagram showing their presence and their projected presence also: South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Guam, of course the Philippines, with our expanded defense agreement with them. There's Australia, Singapore, and they're talking with Thailand also. Japan is a very powerful country militarily. They have 2 helicopter destroyers. They call it a destroyer, but actually they're big, 800 feet long, as big as the medium-sized aircraft carriers. They have 5 Suryu-class attack submarines. They're very good at constructing submarines. 11 Uyashu-class attack submarines. 2 Atago-class Aegis guided missile destroyer with Aegis capability, 10,000 tons. It's a very big destroyer. 4 Congo-class guided missile destroyers, 9,500 tons, also Aegis. And the Air Force is quite powerful. 213 Mitsubishi F-15J, 89 Mitsubishi F-2, and on order, and expected to be delivered next year. 42 F-35A, and another 28 added to the defense budget. If with this kind of an Air Force plus the F-35, they can be the dominant Air Force in the area. And they're also mulling to expand naval patrols to the South China Sea. They've been talking about this on invitation of a very senior US Navy officer. This was a pronouncement made by their defense minister, General Nakatani, when he mentioned that the situation in the South China Sea has an impact on our national security. In other words, they are talking of the South China Sea impacting their security, not just the East China Sea. And I quote, "We are aware that we will need to consider our response." Japan reveals a record defense budget as tension with China grew, and they announced a $42 billion budget for this year. And included in their $42 billion budget would be amphibious vehicles, 20 P-1 maritime patrol aircraft. This is a state-of-the-art patrol aircraft. And then additional 6 F-35A fighter jets in addition to the 42 that are plus 28 that are already on order. And they have this advanced ballistic missile interceptor project also with a budget of 9.4 billion yen. India is also in the area. And India's military capability is not exactly small. It's big, one of the top 10 in the world. They have 2 aircraft carriers, 1 aircraft carrier more than what China has. They have the Akula-class nuclear submarine, 9 Kilo-class submarine, and 9 stealth frigates, some of them locally manufactured. And they have already launched their first indigenous aircraft carrier, the INS Vikrant. In fact, with this, they're ahead of China in so far as aircraft carrier technology is concerned. And China's Navy, and as a response, China's Navy announced, and this was very recently, just a few days ago, that they're going to send more ships to the Indian Ocean, to patrol the Indian Ocean, using submarines. And the reason for this is supposedly for search and rescue and for anti-piracy. And a lot of people are wondering, how can submarines be used for anti-piracy patrols? And of course, the latest development, and this happened late last month only, was a very cozy relationship that emerged after the visit of U.S. President Obama as the guest, special guest of India during their National Day. And here it says that President Obama and Modi agreed to sign a joint statement chiding Beijing for provoking conflict with neighbors over control of the South China Sea. So India has clearly entered the picture. Russia is also there, and Russia 2 years ago reminded the world that it is a Pacific power, with the Russian Navy conducted an extensive joint sea exercise with China's PLA Navy in 2013. But of course, there's a lot of question because in spite of that apparent good relationship, Russia is also supplying Vietnam with their Kilo-class submarines. In fact, they entered into a $3.2 billion contract with Vietnam. I think they've delivered already 2 Kilo-class submarines. And when they deliver complete delivery of 6 Kilo-class submarines, Vietnam can be a big threat to the Chinese PLA Navy. And with respect to Russia, there is the estimate that because of the economic problems there, the Russian Navy may be on the verge of a collapse, to be reduced from 270 to 125 and probably even up to 45 ocean-going surface warships or submarines. And that means that they're going to have a hard time, especially with the economic downturn in Russia today. But of course, there's a China string of pearls strategy. What is this? This is a network of Chinese military and commercial facilities and alliances from the Chinese mainland to Port Sudan. The sea lines run to several major maritime choke points, such as the Strait of Malacca, Hormuz, Lombok Strait, as well as other strategic maritime centers in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the Maldives, and Somalia. And here's a picture of this string of pearls, and you can see that they're building facilities there. They're building a port in Sri Lanka. They're trying to negotiate building a canal in Kral in Thailand, although that sounds very improbable right now. They have, for example, places in, you can see there places in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, Pakistan, and then in Kenya, and then the farthest would be in the port of Sudan. This is their way of also surrounding India, while India is trying to ally with the United States and with Vietnam. Now, I'll talk about our places of immediate interest. And a lot of people, I have to inject this, but a lot of people are saying, why fight over small rocks when they see all these little features in the South China Sea, and they call them small rocks as though they're quite insignificant. In warfare and politics, the potential force of a territory is not necessarily proportionate to the size of the territory. It is the location that determines how much potential and, in the end, kinetic force can be brought to bear from the territory. In other words, how well one can project power, gain access to a bigger objective, or conversely, prevent access or deny access using that